to another segment of On the Couch with McNeill Real Estate. Angela, you may recall, is from Double Bay Conveyancing, and I just wanted to ask Angela this time a few questions actually more related in relation to the Section 32 of the Contract of Sale. So the legal documentation that's required in Victoria, at least anyway, when someone is wanting to buy or sell a home. So I guess the first question, and this is certainly from a real estate perspective, something we always ask for when after we've got a client signed up to buy or sell, is where is the Section 32? So Angela, what is a Section 32 and why is it important?
Right, so no property in Victoria can be sold without a Section 32. Came in 1982, I'm thinking, 83, around there approximately. And it's basically a document that sets out the particulars of the property. So there's a copy of the title, the plan.
Yes.
It sets out any encumbrances, like if there's a covenant that you can't build anything other than a brick house, for example, or that you can't subdivide, or you can't cut down trees, for example. It sets out the details of the planning, so like if it's a residential area, so you can only use it if it's in line with the planning scheme. It will also set out any other restrictions, so like a lot of places are in a bushfire overlay, for example. So for building purposes, for a while ago that had quite an implication because it did put up the costs. And it'll have like if there's a design guideline restriction, so things like parts of Mount Eliza in particular, they've got certain things they can and can't build. Lots of places got trees that can't be removed without a permit. A lot of people think it's my property, I can do what I like. So basically up in like say like the Dandenongs in particular, like Upway and that sort of stuff, there is certain areas where you can't cut down trees. So if you're planning,
even though they're in a bushfire area.
Well that can only be so many metres of the house now, but if you're looking at buying this beautiful block, and you might think you're going to position the house in the middle, but it's got, you know, these clear
treed.
That may not be the area, maybe a little pocket over to the left where you don't want to build it. It's the only place you can build. It also sets out if there's any notices that should be disclosed, like if the neighbour's planning to build, you know, a 10-storey building next door, or if you've been served with a notice, for example, that they're going to build the freeway behind you, or something like that, that's meant to disclose that. Also discloses the council rates. Doesn't have to be the certificates, it's just the amounts.
Okay, like the specific rate amount?
Yes, well, like at this time of year it's an approximation because I haven't struck the rates yet, or we don't have them. But it has to be fairly close because if you put down the rates of $200 and they're $3,000, you're actually giving the purchaser
wrong information
and a right to withdraw. You've got to disclose any building works within the last 7 years, which becomes quite an issue because there is some conjecture now as to whether if you've renovated inside the house that you should be getting an owner builder report done. If they have done works in the last 7 years, you need a copy of the permit, the final inspection, and the warranty insurance if it's over the $16,000 threshold. So once again, if any of those things aren't in the Section 32 and the purchaser finds out there is works
before settlement,
they do have a option of trying to withdraw from the contract, but they have to prove that they were disadvantaged by them not being there.
I see. Right.
Swimming pools are a big one. A lot of people have done works and never had the final inspection done. So that becomes a bit of an issue as well, because there was one pool builder in Berwick who went bust, and there was people about to finish pools and no one would sign off. So that is an issue. So I think if you undertake works, it's quite important to make sure you keep your paperwork in track for down the road. Owner builders, if you do anything as an owner builder, you have to have a special report, which is called a Section 137B report, put in there, that shows that the works have been done to a proper standard.
And so who does that report?
The vendor has to do it. They have to get it from a specialist who, like a building and pest inspector, but not all of them do Section 137B reports. There's a limited number that actually do the report, and that has to be included in your Section 32. And that also helps if they didn't get a permit, because it'll say it's been built properly without a permit. You've given the purchaser full disclosure then.
If something has been built without a permit, what do you
By doing that 137B report in there, you've given the purchaser full disclosure. So it becomes a bit of a buyer beware situation.
All right. Excellent. And with a Section 32, because sometimes, like, when we're in a strong market, homes are selling very quickly, obviously. When we're in a slow market, they can take a bit longer. So how long does a Section 32 last? Does it have to be updated if a house is not sold within 3 months or 6
Yeah,
months?
there seems to be this thing about it being 3 months, but there is nothing that says how long it lasts. I think as long as the information is current,
Yes.
it's fine. So what I tend to do with clients, if it's been on the market for a while and it's switched into the next financial year,
Yes.
I update the particulars because your council rates, your water rates, and that
Will
go
be
up.
different, right?
As long as they haven't changed their mortgage or anything, the title search can still be used.
Okay.
Your owner's corporation certificate, if there is an owner's corporation, they do tend to expire.
Yep.
Because a lot of them will only guarantee their information for 30 to 60 days.
Okay.
So
Right.
that's maybe where
Something
that
to
sort of
look
comes.
at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not a lot really changes unless they've got served with a notice or something like that. So it's always good if it has been on the market for a while
Yes.
to ask the vendor, has there been anything significant changing?
Change in the last.
You know, they might have got new neighbours who said they're going
Yes.
to put 2 units on their block or something like that.
Okay. They need to tell.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So in that respect, if that sort of situation happens, do you sort of keep an eye on the fact that it's been on the market for a while, or do you sort of say to the agent, look, you know,
Look,
this is
most
something you
agents-
should do, or what?
A lot of agents, I think if it's been on the market for a long time, it usually goes to a new agent.
Yeah.
Or if it's still with the same agent, a lot do tend to call you and say, oh look, you know, Mrs. Smith's got a buy now, do you think we need to change anything? A lot of agents seem to be aware of that sort of situation as well.
Yes.
And I think the clients are pretty aware as well, but if they've gone and done something different
Yeah.
in the
They should
interim.
say.
Yes, they should say, yes.
That's great. So the other thing that's obviously important is the actual contract of sale.
Mhm.
So with the contract, just explain, what is a contract of sale?
Alright, so the contract of sale is the offer and acceptance of the property.
Mhm.
It's the binding agreement between the two parties, so it sets out the terms and conditions,
Yep.
the price,
Yes.
the settlement date,
Yes.
and anything that's going to be of benefit to either party.
Mhm.
Special conditions are rather important. They have to, the main thing about special conditions is you can't just say it's subject to a building pest. There has to be like what's called cause and effect.
Yes.
So you have to say 7 days for a building and pest inspection. If there is any defects, then the purchaser has the right to withdraw from the contract.
Yep. So it's a condition, there's a time frame,
Yes.
and there's a ramification.
Yes.
What will happen if it's not satisfied? Yep.
And you can't just write something like the vendor will replace the window.
Yes.
It's the vendor will replace the window with a new piece of glass 7 days prior to settlement, or the purchaser withholds $500.
Okay.
So if it's very clear, then all parties
understand
yeah.
what's happening.
I had one recently, but it just said subject to finance. There's no end date.
Wow.
So up until the day of settlement, they could say we don't have finance.
Exactly.
So it's quite important that you do that. And you know, my tip has always been that if you're not sure, ask.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of agents won't write special conditions.
Yes.
And they're technically not meant to. I mean, you're building a test and that's basic.
There's standard.
But if it's something a little bit out of the norm, it's better to ask.
Okay.
Because, you know, by not asking, you're jeopardising a contract.
That's right.
And you're going to have a very unhappy vendor.
Correct.
So, it's, you know, for the sake of fine, I know it might be a Saturday and you can't get someone, but, I mean, that's a service I do offer my agents. I'm happy to answer that on a Saturday.
Fantastic.
And, you know, I've been cooking dinner,
Yep.
typing special conditions.
Yep. That's helpful because I know myself there's been some instances where a purchaser has asked for something and I'm thinking, interesting. How do I write this? How can I put this in so that those three things are covered? And it's like, I'll just make a phone call.
Yeah, well, and it is. I mean, it's a good idea.
Yes.
It's, you know.
Yep.
And I think your clients actually appreciate that too, that you're saying, well, look, I'm not 100% sure, I'll ask someone who is sure.
That's right. Because at the end of the day, you don't want either the vendor or the purchaser to miss out on this thing simply because, you know, we've done something that
and you put
not
so much work into getting it that far, you don't want it to fall over. Once you've got it there, you don't want it falling over.
No. So, coming into that sort of situation, what are some of the special conditions to sort of be aware of? From both, you know, obviously a buyer and a seller want different conditions for different reasons.
Yes.
So what sort of conditions?
Alright, so I suppose the most common ones, especially in the tougher market, it is like subject to the purchaser selling their existing property, which is fine if you've got no other offer.
Yes.
But it is like, I know, a two-pronged fork, isn't it? You're waiting on that, but technically it's no different to being subject to finance.
Yes.
It's still waiting on something to happen.
Yes.
I think as a vendor, if you know that purchaser has got a conditional contract on their their own property, then it's not too bad to take that condition. But if it's subject to them selling in a month or 2 months or whatever, you are taking a risk. But it depends on where you sit and to be guided by the agent as to whether that's a fair thing to do. A lot of people are now starting to put sunset clauses in with those, which I don't know if I'm a huge fan, but it does give your vendor options.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But with a sunset clause, the vendor can only take another offer if it's a better offer or an unconditional offer, and the first purchaser gets the option of going unconditional.
Yes, or matching the conditions of the other one, or
they basically have to go unconditional because the next offer would have to be unconditional. Most purchasers want building and pest, which is fair enough.
Now, interestingly, and sorry to interrupt, with a building and pest inspection, is it subject to major pest infestation or major structural defects, or is it just to the purchaser's satisfaction? I mean,
but to the purchaser's satisfaction should be banned for life, because what's that mean? Like, you're buying a 40-year-old house and it's got a chip tile.
Yeah.
A lot of larger law firms will put that in to, I think, maybe endear themselves to the client, but you just end up with dissatisfied purchasers.
Yeah, well, I've found in the past that, speaking to a conveyancer, if they're acting for the vendor, they want me to say major structural.
Yes.
If they're acting for the purchaser, they want me to say to the purchaser's satisfaction, and it's like...
So I disagree. I think it should be major structural, because to the purchaser's satisfaction, you're buying an established home. It's like buying a second-hand car. It's not going to be perfect.
Yes. And it's open to interpretation.
That's right. And so that means basically you're giving the purchaser another chance of cooling off.
Yes.
Because they can just say, no, I've decided I don't like it. It doesn't meet my standards. I've decided those pink wall tiles aren't nice, but they were there when you bought them.
Yes.
They haven't changed in the last 7 days, but
that's
okay.
Right. But,
so that's wishy-washy.
Yeah, I agree.
And if there's going to be, in an older house, there's going to be some rot somewhere in a window.
Yep.
It's buyer beware, and it's, you've got to take on board that you are going to have to do some maintenance.
Correct.
Per se.
Yeah. Even brand new homes have problems.
Oh, they do.
So they don't always pass.
99% of contracts will have major structural. The termites is another one. Just had an issue where there was some old termites in a sleeper in the garden, and my client's the purchaser, and she went on and on and on and on. Turns out her last house had termites. I wish she'd told me up front. I would have known why she was so nervous. But of course the vendor's gone, there's no termites, I'm not doing anything.
Yes.
And she's saying he has to spray, and I'm going, he doesn't, it's not in the house. There's no damage. And this went back and forth for a week until she actually realised we were right, and there's nothing there.
Okay.
But like fixing things like saying the tiles are faded on the roof. Well, that's wear and tear. That's not the vendor's responsibility.
Yes.
You've got it at a price that takes into consideration those.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Things that may need replacing. So I mean, it is a bargaining tool for a purchaser. If they find a lot of nitty gritties and they're still subject to finance, they may be able to use it as a bit of a tool. But it's a hard one.
No. It's an interesting one. So with a contract that is subject to finance, what sort of period is normal for that to be for the finance to be approved? And also, if a contract is subject, and obviously both the buyer and the seller have signed the contract and it's subject to finance for whatever period, can the seller then sell it to someone else?
Not during that finance clause, no. So most conditions are inuring, what's called inuring for the benefit of the purchaser, so they benefit the purchaser, not vendor.
Yes.
So to the unconditional stage, the contract very much favours the purchaser.
Yep.
And then once it's sold, the purchaser has no rights, basically. But so your finance clause is standard 14 days.
Okay.
Some would do 7, but in this market it seems to be taking longer, so an extension isn't abnormal.
Yes.
It can be done in less. It depends how good the purchaser is on getting their paperwork to their bank and so on. So they have 14 days from the day of signing. Usually, I always say it's better to put a date in. Don't put 14 days from now. It's much better to put finance by the 15th of August. It's better than 14 days from contract.
Yeah. Because then if the contract's not signed by the vendor for a couple of days, which date are you using?
It should be vendor's day, but it gets very confusing.
Yeah.
So you're better say all parties are clear.
Yes.
You put a day for finance, a day for deposit, and a day for settlement. Not 90 days from the day of signing. That's so that So the purchaser has that 14 days. On day 14, if their finance isn't approved, they should ask for their extension then.
Yes.
The vendor then has the right to say no. If the vendor says no, the purchaser can go, okay, I'll proceed.
Yes.
Or matters at an end and they get their money back. There is a 2-day envelope after that.
Yes, people don't realise that.
Now that 2-day envelope is, I would never rely on that because it's very, very vague. It's a 2-day, that's more if your loan has been approved, you can notify within the 48 hours. I would never ask for an extension in that 48 hours.
Right.
Because if you haven't paid your deposit, you're actually in default and then you can't ask for the extension.
Ah, okay.
Technically.
Right. Okay.
So, I would ask on day 14. I'll be going back to the office to do one when I get back from here. We're hoping to get approval by about 3 o'clock, he said, so I said I'll do it when I get back. But I do it on day 14. I sometimes do it in the morning just in case something goes wrong with my day.
Yes.
And
you get held up.
I'll get called out or something. I always tell people in case I get hit by a bus, I live in a court. I live in a court and working from home, so that'd be concerning. Yes, but you never know.
Yeah.
So I always do those first, so you've covered your clients. I won't let a client go unconditional unless I see the approval letter from the bank.
Yes.
Because a client will go, yes, I've got approval, and when you get it, it's a pre-approval.
Yeah.
Or it's a conditional approval.
Yes.
Or I did have one once that got approved for $20,000 instead of $200,000.
Oh, ouch.
So he sent it through to me. He was a first home buyer, sent it through to me before he went unconditional. So I said, you've got to go back, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And it was fine, it was a bank error, but that may have been all he
exactly
could have got. And once it's unconditional,
there's no going back.
No. And they lose their deposit if it don't settle. So
Yeah.
I think it's important that they
we
have a look over it and make sure it is a full approval.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Now the next thing. Oh yes. Can I once it is unconditional, a contract? Can either the buyer or the seller change their mind?
No.
Okay.
So an unconditional contract is just that.
That's it.
So either party can default at the end and it doesn't settle and it becomes a notice of default. A default notice has to be served. If the vendor doesn't want to settle, the purchaser would probably have to take them to court to get it through. If the purchaser doesn't want to settle, they will lose their deposit.
Yes. Okay. Have you ever experienced a vendor not wanting to settle?
Yeah, there has been vendors who don't want to settle, but it usually ends up working out the wash.
Yeah.
Or the purchasers doesn't get financed. But no, usually the ones that don't want to settle, it's a matrimonial and one party doesn't want to move. So, and they can end up in court orders and a solicitor signing on behalf of one party. So,
interesting.
Yeah, that happens a bit too. So,
okay.
It's very interesting.
How long can a settlement be?
As long as you want. Look, 30 days, 60 days is normal. 90's not that uncommon. I've got some already for 2020.
Yep. Okay.
I've had contracts, some land in Cranbourne South that sat there for 4.5 years before they settled.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, there's not any. Those sort of ones do have a use by date.
Yes.
So they have like a sunset clause. And the standard sunset clause under the contract is 18 months, but they all change them, the developers all change them, give themselves 36 months minimum to get the plan registered.
Okay.
So after that 36 months, either party can opt out at no penalty to either party.
The other.
So that works well for the developer.
Yes.
Because land's gone up considerably.
That's right, so he cancels the contract and sells it to someone else.
Yes.
I've heard that happen.
Yes. It would work well for the purchaser if it was a declining market, but in most cases it doesn't work for them because land prices have only gone up.
Exactly. So,
but there is those little outs, but they're fairly well hidden.
Yeah. Okay. Now, with I guess a house or a unit, a townhouse, whatever, does a purchaser have to do a final inspection? And if they want to, whatever, how soon before settlement?
So 7 days prior to settlement, so in the week prior to settlement, they're entitled to a final inspection.
Yes.
They don't have to do it.
They don't have to?
No.
Okay. Yep.
But most of them like to go and have another look.
Yeah.
Having said that, they go do that final inspection and they find something wrong. There is very little that can be done unless the vendor is reasonable.
Right.
So if they go back and there's like the vendor's moved the couch and there's scratches on the wall.
Or there's a big hole in the wall.
Yes.
Yes.
We always contact the vendor's conveyancer and say, we've done our final inspection and we list out what's wrong. Most of them will write back and say that's how it was at the time of purchase, thank you.
Yes.
If the purchaser can prove any different, the only option is to take the vendor to VCAT or something afterwards for costs.
Okay. So in other words, you have to settle.
Yes, you have to settle.
Yes.
There is a general condition in the contract, which when they bought it in mid-2000s, we thought was really exciting. It said that you could hold back the sum of $5,000.
Yes.
But if you read the next condition, it's only if the purchaser puts another $5,000 in as well. So $5,000 the vendor's money gets held back, the purchaser puts another $5,000, and the vendor has to agree to it.
Right.
Not had a vendor agree to it yet.
No.
So
really?
Yeah, don't understand why.
I don't get that one.
No. Look, occasionally you'll get one that'll agree and they'll say yes, we can take $1,000 off.
Yes.
But not many of them.
Okay.
So that's where I think it goes back to where I said before, the purchaser doesn't have that many rights.
No.
So, and it is quite common when furniture's moved, like, there's been ones where they found the floorboards are only polished to where the bed was.
Yep, we've seen some interesting ones as well, but
something like a rug's covering holes in floors or chip tiles, and hey, we're all human, we do the same thing. So that's where purchasers don't have rights unless they go. And like a major one I would say to any purchaser is please try the appliances before you buy.
Yes. So when you say that, do you mean before you sign the contract or before settlement?
Before you sign the contract, because it's too late at settlement.
Yep.
So it's too late to come to me at settlement and say the ducted heating doesn't work. Did you try it when you bought the house? No. So we write to the vendor and say the ducted heating's not working, and of course they reply, wasn't working when we sold it. So who can tell?
Yes.
A lot of agents, a lot of purchasers, probably is a good one, put in that all appliances have to be in good working order at settlement.
Yes.
So, hot water services, I've had those go like the morning of settlement, so when the purchaser turns them on, they're gone, well, you've settled.
Yep.
I did have one that the vendor took the air conditioning out of the wall and the purchaser didn't notice for 3 months. And then rang me and go, the air conditioning's missing. A bit late now.
God, that's interesting.
There has been ones where there's a unit, like the unit's on the wall, and there's
the
inverter's not there.
Oh my goodness.
But that was not there when they bought it. So
right. Yeah, interesting. So just to follow on that then, if a settlement is delayed, what happens? So settlement's booked for 11 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't go through. What happens?
Okay, so that's one of the beauties with PEXA. It just keeps rolling over to the next half hour.
Okay.
So you can settle up till 5 o'clock with PEXA.
Yes.
So under the old system, if it didn't settle at 11 and we were on the phone trying to get the bank to resettle sometime in the afternoon, which they wouldn't do. So it'd be delayed a day, maybe 2, maybe 3 days.
Yep.
So basically, if it doesn't settle, we go into damage control. If it doesn't settle for documents aren't signed, that can be fixed. If it doesn't settle because there's something fundamentally wrong, like the vendor doesn't have enough money to pay the bank, which can quite often happen.
Yes.
The first thing I try and do is get my purchasers still into the house under a license agreement.
Okay.
So they're not inconvenienced, they're not sitting out there with their removalist checking up the hours and the costs.
Yes. Yep.
If it's an investment one, it's not such a big deal. If it's land, it's not such a big deal. Yeah. Of course, if the purchaser can't settle, the vendor has the right to charge in costs.
Okay, right.
So that's penalty interest, which currently is at 12%. Per annum, but that adds up to a couple $100 a day. Yep. The conveyancer.
What about accommodation?
Well,
their removalist fees.
They can charge it, but that gets a bit. You'd have to issue a default notice.
Okay.
It doesn't happen that often. Usually, you end up somewhere being reasonable.
Yeah,
it depends on what the reason is.
Yes.
And who you're dealing with.
Yes.
Like, I think locally we're all working quite well, and
you're all trying to.
You've all got the one goal.
That's right. We're all trying to put someone into a home.
And quite often, if I'm not if there's someone on the other side that I don't know, I'll ring the agent and go, look, oh Janet, there's a problem. Do you think you could speak to your vendor? Because I have to go through their solicitor who hasn't been very forthcoming. Could you maybe speak to your vendor and say, look, my poor people are going to be homeless. They've got 4 kids, a dog, and a grandma. They're going to be on the street for the night, and you can usually work something out.
Fantastic.
I think there's only been 1 or 2 cases in 30 odd years of doing it where we haven't been able to get something done.
Agreement. Okay.
Yeah, so I think you kind of learn over the years.
Yes.
And you've got your backups there.
Yes. Yeah.
And like less and less settlements fall over now because of PEXA. It is a lot quicker. It's the banks can be organised on the day instead of having to be organised a week ahead. So for people who used to leave
Very
things to the
different.
last minute,
Yeah.
it is very good. For me, who liked everything 2 weeks in advance, it's hard.
It's hard, yeah.
But it, you know, there is a lot more, like, all right, it may settle late and it may cost them $100 in removals, but at least it settles that day.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
So-
that's important. Yeah.
And yeah, PEXA and that will be quite good. They can flip things back on for you if it's not working. We used to have to wait an hour or two. They've now pushed that time down to half an hour, so it's only
Brilliant.
rolling. Yeah, so it's quite good.
That's great.
So it's getting there. Still a teething process for everyone, but as everyone learns how to use the system better,
Yes, it
it's
gets
getting.
tweaked and
Yeah.
improved and
And I've done a couple of like forum or pilot groups where I've tried things for PEXA to say, on what we think needs to change. So it's quite good like that.
Okay.
The banks are still slow, they don't sign off quick enough. And we don't know how much funds the clients have got, and that makes it hard if it's short of money, it's a panic.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's
You get
good.
there in the end.
Well, that was really interesting. Thank you, Angela. That concludes this little session. So, on the couch with McNeill Real Estate and Angela from Double Bay Conveyancing, and we're signing off. Thank you very much.